Mr. Sullivan.
And Mr. Jackson.
Here we are.
Yeah, I just got back from Phoenix late last night. So I was at Genius Network, and
I saw that. Yeah, how was it?
Yeah. Well, it was really interesting. You know, my approach to any kind of conference is that I'd be happy if I just got one great thing, one great thing. And that happened at 10 o'clock on the first morning. So the rest of it, I just sort of coasted for the rest of the conference. And, you know, I mean, the first day was exercises, and Russell Brunson was there, and he, you know, did a presentation. And Dean Graziosi's partner, Ethan, was there, and he did, you know, a presentation on coaching. And then the next day we had Ray Kurzweil zoomed in, and, you know, talking about artificial intelligence. And then Molly Bloom, who a movie was made on her.
Yes, that was fantastic.
Yeah, and she was there, and she talked about, you know, the various stages of her life, including being a convicted felon and what that was all about. And then we had Scott Hoffman, who's a book agent. He was there. So lots of food for thought. But I got my it was actually Dean Graziosi showing how he is hiring right now, and it fits in marvelously well with Who Not How. So anyway.
I saw that you did a little presentation on that too.
Yeah. And, you know, about 4 or 5 people came up to me and said that it had instantly clarified what was bogging them down. So it's always useful to be useful.
It's always useful to be useful. That's true. Oh, that's so good. Well, welcome back. So are you in Chicago now or Toronto?
No, I'm in Toronto. I flew back last night. And, yeah. Enough of that sun, enough of that heat. Let's get back to reality.
Yeah, is it still snowing up there?
Well, we had a huge windstorm here on Friday that took out half the power of the city. So my internet is still down. So
oh my goodness.
I don't know how the internet goes down. What is it? A tower goes down, or I'm not quite sure how the internet goes down as a result of a windstorm.
Well, you're probably the least affected person in the entire Toronto GTA by that outcome.
Well, I was just doing a little review of my recent contact list on my cell phone. I had a minute before we got together this morning, and since July of 2016, when we started the Joy of Procrastination series, you account for half of my calls.
Half of all the cell phone minutes used. I love it. That's the perfect thing.
You account for 95% of the cell phone minutes.
You're talking about the volume of calls. Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about the volume of calls. No, you're 95% of the total minutes.
So
you're
funny.
Compared to the others, you're expensive.
That's funny. I love that.
Yeah.
But worth it.
The other
what
one,
is Stella Artois? Reassuringly expensive.
Yeah, and of the others, a third of them are from Babs, but they're just basically little calls, reminder here and there. And then it's Rogers, the cable company, my phone company, trying to sell me something, you know, so just little notices that I can always expand my expenditures with them, but not compelling, I would say, not compelling sales messages.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well,
so you're right to say that the internet going down. Although I do miss it. I mean, I'm to write to balance things here. I do a couple hours on the internet every day. So last night I wasn't able to do that. But Babs and I went for brunch to a restaurant that has Wi-Fi. So I caught up on things this morning.
Yeah. Interesting. So, in the time that since the last time we spoke, I spoke at Dan Kennedy's super conference in Orlando. And then I just shared at, do you remember there was a book years ago, or a series of books called Guerrilla Marketing with J. Conrad Levinson, right? And the funny thing, he's passed on, and they had a summit here in Orlando this past weekend. So I went and shared and collected. This was the funniest thing, Dan. I collected an award for Joe Polish being inducted into the Guerrilla Marketing Hall of Fame, along with people like Seth Godin and others who have famously won the induction. And the thing was, Joe was being inducted into the Guerrilla Marketing Hall of Fame for his amazing work with Dean Jackson on the I Love Marketing podcast and other accomplishments in marketing, which was it's so funny to hear that Joe is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame for his amazing work with me. It was kind of funny.
I was trying to think of another situation like that. That would, it would be like Paul McCartney being awarded a prize. John Lennon for his tremendous teamwork with Paul McCartney.
Exactly. That's brilliant. That's exactly the feeling I had. And I was there to collect the award for it, to accept his induction. It struck me so funny the way it was written on the announcement, that it was just so funny to me. I love it. But
so when you received the award, was the presenter aware of your obviously
Oh yeah.
Obviously Joe Polish, but were they aware of your relationship with Dean Jackson?
Right, exactly. Oh man, it's so funny, man. I have to smile just to see the way they put the announcement about it for his amazing work with Dean Jackson. Oh,
that's very dimensional. It's got
the reason I was sharing that
dimensions to it. Yeah, that one has lots of dimensions to it.
The reason I was sharing that with you, one of the things that I always love to listen to Dan Kennedy talk. So that was the first event a couple of weeks ago. And one of the things that he said, he's talking about the, 5 most important things of that entrepreneurs or business owners need to focus on. And, the first 3 were about, getting customers, keeping customers, retaining customers. And then the one that was really interesting was prioritizing was I can't remember the exact words, but it was essentially prioritizing opportunities and then executing the top priorities. And it struck me as something like what we talk about here, in that really is for a 10 quick start, or a couple of 10 quick starts here, there's no shortage of opportunity. and the prioritizing of that becoming the big, the big thing. And I wondered about I like this. I've always loved this idea that you always bring up about picking the 3 for the day. And that just feels so, it feels relaxing, but it also feels like it's a drop in the bucket of the list of things,
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you, I don't think we've talked about that. How do you manage the sort of idea flow or the idea like overflow to choose just the 3?
Yeah, I was thinking about that because I was at a series of dinners. I was in New York for 4 days, and we had meals out with friends in New York, and then I went to Phoenix, and we had some more meals. And in all except one of the cases, you had to choose from a menu. And here's how I choose for a menu. I pick up the menu. I look, I'll have that, and I have that, and I put the menu down. And this is before anyone else has looked at the menu. I've already got my 3 things picked out. And then it was really quite an extensive process of the other people at the table. Well, what about this and what about that? And how is that served? And, there were all these questions. And, in the least amount of time, it was 10 minutes before the other people at the table had made up their
minds. Yeah.
Made up their minds about it. And I was finished, probably, maximum, I was certainly finished in half a minute. I just, I want a salad. Okay, there's a salad. I want an entree. There's an entree. Do I want a side? Yeah, I'll have a side. And that's it. That's the maximum. There's only 3 things that can possibly happen. I'm not going to have dessert. And I was just pondering this because it happened numerous times in a fairly short period of time, over a period of about 6 or 7 days. And I was asking myself, well, why do you do that? Why do you do what you do, and why do the others do? So I was just comparing what was going on between my approach and other people's approach. And and this is a partial answer to the question you're asking. One of my priorities is to have decided.
So you cut out for a little bit there, Dan. You said you started to share what was the big revelation, and then you cut out.
One of my biggest priority every day is to have decided.
Ah, okay. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
So it's not so much the importance of the 3 things. I've just decided on 3 things, and now I'm engaged, and so I'm not pestered with alternatives of what I could have done. I've eliminated the alternatives by having decided.
Yes. That's very... there's something deeper about that because there's so many. When you're weighing options, it's really being firmly planted in midair, right? That's the thing. And when you go down, like you just look at the way you described, and you've described this several times. You said when you go to Genius Network that you're looking for one idea, and then you got that at 10 a.m. and you weren't really weighing that now against which one is there a better idea kind of thing. You got that idea, and I get the sense that what you did was place that one, you locked that in, that's the idea, and while you're listening in background to all the other things, that main idea was marinating over the 2 days rather than looking, comparing, and weighing it for more options.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that in the course of Joe's 2 days, you have little breakout sessions with, he's got various thinking tools. And I use 3 thinking tools to actually just develop my thinking on this one thing, and including a really great conversation with Dean Graziosi himself, and the idea had come, and I zeroed in on how he had done what he did. Essentially, what Dean did is that he's building up again. He had really reduced down to almost a skeleton staff, and now he's developing up again because he switched over from his real estate investment educational empire down to a more of an entrepreneurial focusing program and coaching entrepreneurs online. And he's got a book out which is selling terrifically. He's already sold 250,000 copies, which is fantastic in the nonfiction world. And so I really dealt. But once I had got that one idea, then the 2 days were using other speakers and other experiences to actually develop that one idea. So I'm ready to implement this idea actually tomorrow morning. I go into the video. It'll require a video on my part. And, but I'm already set. And the person who's going to do it was actually at the workshop. Paul Hamilton usually comes with us, but he was on a cruise. And Linda Bawalda, who's my social media manager, she was there. And so we already lined up what we're going to do. And I talked to Babs about it. She was there. So I had really developed this idea. And for me to come away with an exciting new idea, to have really developed it over 2 days, that's a great payoff for me for the 2 days.
Yeah, right. That's great. And so that'll become one of your 3 things for tomorrow. Yeah.
And the other 2 are already scheduled. So this was the only part of my schedule tomorrow that was really where there was an opening where something new could happen. So I filled it. So the thing about it, one of the things I become aware is that in the circles that I hang out with, which are very similar to the circles that you hang out with, or Joe, or everybody, the problem is not enough. The problem people are facing, which is probably a bit unique in human history, is not, lots of people, the problem is not enough opportunity.
Right.
We have just the opposite. We have just the opposite problem. We've got too much opportunity. And when I say too much, you could never stop investigating how much opportunity you actually have. In other words, if you wanted to spend a whole day thinking about all the opportunities that you actually had, you'd still be adding to the pages on the list by the time you went to bed. So we're not. What we're faced is, the big problem is deciding on one, or 2 or 3.
Right.
But by the time you get to 4, you're not in a bonus territory anymore. The opportunities are starting. So my feeling is the cutoff between opportunities being a good thing and opportunities being a bad thing is the difference between 3 and 4.
Oh, that's interesting. So 3 seems like the manageable one. That's really, it's. Did we talk about Warren Buffett's prioritizing idea?
Well, I've heard various takes on how he sizes up thing, and one of them has to do with the person who's running the company. I mean, his first thing is that he evaluates the person. So I think he invests in people before he invests in companies. But then having decided that the person's a good person, then he looks at the company and, are they a blue chip brand? Do they have, is it a growth industry? Do they have a dominant position that could get even better in the future? And the other thing, which seems, is this something people are still going to be buying more of 25 years from now?
Right, exactly. That's his thing. Yeah, a sustainable advantage, a durable advantage, he calls it. But the other, the I don't know whether this is kind of urban legend or whether this was, a real scenario that somebody was having a hard time selecting or making choices, and he had them make a list of the 25 most important things that they want to get done, the 25 most important things they want to accomplish. And then from that list, he had them narrow it down to eliminate all but the most important 5 things on that list. And then, rewrite the list with just those 5 things on it. And he was checking with them to see, okay, so now what are you going to do about those 5 priorities, he said. And the gentleman said, well, I'm going to, focus on these ones as the primary thing and then work on these others just as time allows, or when I have, less importantly. And he said, no, the list of 20 things becomes your avoid at all costs list.
Yes.
And you're focused only on these 5 things. And it's those other 20 things that are going to take you away from creating, from focusing on these top 5. And that was that's an interesting thing. Like we sometimes talk about making a not to think about list or a not to do list. And you can, I think, appease yourself with putting something on that list for a quarter, or even as you're doing, you're essentially thinking for today.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about how do you handle the idea flow or idea barrage on a daily basis once you've locked in on what your 3 are? How many do you think you're selecting from at any given time?
Well, there are things which are preordained. So, Sunday at 12:30, there's a certain number of Sundays going out 12 months that are already handled because I'm talking to you, and I have other, I have now 6 other podcast series,
right?
And they're all handled the same way, and so those. Like I have Steve crying tomorrow, and then I have somebody else on Tuesday. So that's already for tomorrow. That's one of the 3 things that get me to 100% tomorrow. Okay, and the big thing I should say that along with focusing just on 3 things, that if I get the 3 things done, I'm at 100% for the day. If I get a 4th thing, something comes up and I get a 4th thing done, I'm above 100%. I'm in bonus territory. Okay, and what I've noticed is there's a difference between that approach and the approach that I'm going to put 10 things down, knowing I'm only going to get 5 done tomorrow. And I said, so, okay, that's good. It's really getting those 5 things done. But do you actually give yourself credit for getting 5 things done tomorrow? Or do you hold yourself as deficient because you missed 5 things out of your list of 10? And I noticed that people default to what they didn't get done. They don't actually put the spotlight on what they did done when they put together a long list. And they do this day after day after day, and they've done it every day of their life. And it just seems to me like blueprinting your life for failure. You're always failing. You're setting it up. Yeah, you're setting it up every day so you can't win. And I said, well, what? I said, it's your game. I mean, you're designing the rules of this game. Why are you designing the game so that you're always losing? I said, I designed the game so that I always win. And if it looks like I'm not winning the three a day game 5 days in a row, I said, I'm going to change the rules. Yeah. And so, I mean, a lot of people, I mean, here's the thing that I, just because I'm on this little topic, I think if individuals realize that the entire way they're experiencing their life is a game that they set up for themselves. Okay? Right. Nobody else set this game up for you. And I think once you accept total responsibility and ownership for your daily experience, that nobody did this to you. I mean, what I mean is there isn't somebody else whose entire intent was to make your life miserable.
Right. Yeah, it's so funny how different people play the game differently, and I think that's the joy of it. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm right here.
Yeah, I'm here.
There we go. I got so excited, I flailed my arm and my headset came flying out.
Yeah. You see, that adds texture. I mean, you've just
really does
add a granular texture to the podcast.
Well, one of my favorite things is just seeing how differently people play the game. So if I go out to Phoenix. I'll usually, if I'm going for Genius Network or something, I'll usually go a few days early and I'll spend some time with Joe. And the way that I have learned to enjoy that experience is I have nothing on my agenda for that day. I say that's my thing. My thing is I'm just going to strap in and enjoy the ride for the day, just to observe, to be completely malleable and see where it ends up. But it's just this one long perpetual motion day that there's no sort of moving towards anything. There may be a general sense of a couple of things that have to get done, but you never know what's going to happen. And we inevitably will end up recording a podcast or running into somebody or adjusting plans, even as it's going, everything is to constantly see this incoming barrage and accept or move to adjust to whatever needs to happen, even to the point of settling on going to dinner at one place and then in the middle of it, changing and getting a reservation for another place on the way to the place that we already had the reservation for. And it's just so if you weren't flexible or willing to engage at that level, it may seem frustrating,
or chaotic,
or chaotic. It's definitely chaotic, but overall, then when you reflect on the day, when you look at the progress, not the gap or where we're headed, because you couldn't see that coming, that you've ended up that there was a lot accomplished during the day, but probably 60 or 70% of it was not even on the radar at the beginning of the day.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because essentially, when you get together with Joe, you're no longer in control.
Right. That's what I mean. That's why I have to say I let go of that, and I'm totally fine with that. But that's the way that it's I just smile and I enjoy it, and I know that it's whatever is going to happen is going to happen. Absolutely. Yeah. Of course we'll do that. Yes, yes.
So that's one of your rules. Yeah. I mean, you're like switching a button on the control panel and saying, we're going on freeform for a couple of days. You know, we'll just go on freeform. So that's what I talk about, having your games that you're in different situations. Don't try to play the same rules to different situations. I find my happiness level has gone way up as I've developed a whole different set of rules depending upon situations. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's interesting because then when I get together with you, I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, I've got you. We're set for 12 months out. Always we're set for 12 months out. And that's one of the rules because the only thing that really matters in this podcast structure is what you and I say to each other over a 1 hour period. So there's nothing to be gained by getting involved in the backstage organization or spending time with it. So we've minimized absolutely to probably as much as zero as we possibly can, having to be concerned about anything except just going with the particular conversation that we're having.
Yes.
So that's a rule.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really interesting because if you accept the fact that you're the one to say how you want your daily experience to go, and first of all, nobody has any insight into that, or possibly I mean, they have no awareness of how, if you follow Dean around, I'm talking about you, Dean, if they follow you around for a day, they have no insight in how you're actually organizing your experience and how you're organizing the activities of your day. I don't think anybody has any insight into how any other individual actually puts together and organizes their daily experience. The only question you can ask them is the way that you're organizing your daily experience. Is it serving your purposes? Is it making you happy? Do you feel?
Are you happy? That's really it.
Yeah. Are you happy the way you're organizing it? And so that's an interesting thing, and we can learn from each other. I mean, it's not that each person is so unique that other people can't gain insight from them. But you could, first of all, how you actually think about your day is constantly developing in your mind, so nobody from the outside could possibly keep up with the new dimensions that you're actually adding, because a lot of what you do is just a response in a split second, and you just changed a rule, and that feels good, but nobody would get there. That's why I think the whole notion of Ray Kurzweil with his artificial intelligence, and it's not too much different. I saw him 6 years ago, and the only difference between what Ray was saying 6 years ago and what he said on Friday morning was some of the achievements of the artificial intelligence programs, like beating the top chess player, beating the top Go player, and, winning Jeopardy and everything like that. And, but I had known about those because I'd read about them on the internet, so I was doing there. But it seemed to me that this constant comparison of artificial intelligence with human intelligence is it's kind of fruitless, because my feeling is that the way humans actually approach their daily experience is not really observable, recordable, or imitatable. So that a artificial intelligence program 1 billion trillion times more powerful than we have today will be no closer to comprehending how humans actually organize their experience than they are today.
Wow. I was at this guerrilla marketing event. I met a gentleman who does, he's got an artificial intelligence, a video creation sort of algorithm that they have that he's applied to a website for numerology. And the experience that it provides is just, it was the most engaging thing I've ever seen online. In that you just type in your name and your date of birth, and the everything then, even to the personalized audio track of the video, is Dan, and it's personalized and sounds like it's you. A real just for you video, not at all, not a hint of this is machine generated. And he was sharing some of the things that, even though right now he's preparing, the experience is kind of a hybrid of the back of it is AI sort of high-end computing in the back, but it's coupled with some with human intervention, in that the scripting, the reading of all of the videos is human, and they've taken the top 2,000 most common first names and recorded the real voice, and they have to do, it's many thousands of, because there's many different inflections of how you have to record that name. Yeah, depending on how you're using it in a sentence, there's different ways of fitting Dan into a sentence. When you're going, so Dan, and it's really, but it was really riveting, and I think that you see how that sort of thing is really going to have an impact. I can just imagine what kind of what Ray was sharing.
Oh yeah. There's no question. But if but I'll give you an example that I saw, and it was Dean Jackson emails, and it was being it was on coaching, and it was actually Brendan Bouchard sent out a series of Dean Jackson emails, and so they were incredibly effective, because most of them were, the 9-word kind of emails. Hey, I'm going to be in Dallas tomorrow, and I just wondered if you'd like to get together with 14 other people. I have 3 slots left, and it was incredibly effective, and that's a real jump in marketing, what you created there. And I would say that this numerology thing, it's a jump in marketing, but it has no resemblance to human intelligence. It's just a way of getting it. Amidst the other ways of attracting someone's attention, this is a breakthrough.
Yeah.
But then, within a very short period of time of this coming out, there will be 30 artificial intelligence programs using the same technique to kind of get your attention.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really, and I wonder about that. Like, I start to see those types of emails coming around. Like, there's a lot of those being used now. But they're so just fundamental that they're exactly what people would say. But I think about that, right? Is that going to wear out? But it's almost like,
well, first of all, did you plug your birth date and your name in?
I did, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was engaging for you?
Very.
Response, very engaging. Would it be as engaged? Okay, so you did it on a Sunday. Okay, and you listened to it, and then you did it again on Monday. Would it be as engaging on Monday?
Well, I think it's the first time, I guess, right? Like when you're hearing the same information.
Yeah.
But where I was going with that was
like Siri and Alexa, people said it's amazing what they could do. And I said, I did Siri about 5 times, and then I quickly decided that Siri's a bit of an idiot.
Yeah, Siri is. Alexa.
And Siri has no insight into thought patterns, and Alexa doesn't either, And I said, here's the thing. I don't talk to people who have intelligence like Siri and Alexa. Why would I talk to a machine that has that type of intelligence?
That's true. And it's really interesting. Elon Musk there were big headlines that Elon just recently said that Tesla made a mistake with too much automation, that humans really are the killer app kind of thing, that they rely too much on automation.
It's just really, really interesting because, I think that the key to humans is just the sheer unpredictability of humans, how humans will actually respond to any experience. That's the key. So the most that artificial intelligence can actually tell me about me is what I've done.
Yes.
It has no insight into what I'm going to do next.
Yeah, that's
because I don't.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you don't even know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
And this is the thing. Humanity isn't the sum total of humanity is not what we've done. It's what we're going to do next by responding to what we've done in entirely new ways. This is. I was sitting there because I know all of Ray's stuff. I've read his books and everything else, and I was thinking, really, what you're kind of doing is creating probably pretty good rules of thumb about how you have to organize things in such a way that humans don't do themselves harm. But we already have lots of systems like that. The traffic control system is one of them. It would be, if we're going to have people driving around in cars, when they come to a intersection, probably we need to have some rules here about how, red, yellow, and green. We need some things like that. So my feeling is that I think one of the reasons why artificial intelligence is becoming more and more of a necessity is just the sheer number of humans that there are on the planet, and this will grow. And they're more freed up than they have in previous times of interacting with each other in unpredictable ways. And so we've got to create some rules of how large masses of people interact with each other. And I think this is really why the artificial intelligence is, one, necessary, two, why it's useful, but it's going to be the main issue is the giving good systems of governance and, sort of peaceful cooperation rather than collisions and warfare and crime. I think this is a big issue. Since I was born in 1944, the global population has more than tripled. It was 2.2 billion, now it's 7.5 billion. And, they can interact with each other to a degree that wasn't even conceivable. And so I think the artificial intelligence isn't about, it's really, really not about machines becoming smarter than humans. It's creating structures which allow humans to go on doing what they're doing as the population increases and their ability to interact with each other keeps increasing.
Yes. Yeah, and you think about that, like the population, that's where they even at Abundance talk about the 3 billion more people coming online to Cloudlandia, I guess. That's the population I wonder if we're saying there's 7.2 billion people on the mainland. I wonder what the population of Cloudlandia is right now. Was it 3 billion or something?
Yeah, I think, well, they have to use something like the simplest is to use cell phones.
Right.
Like because they can keep. And I think it's over 3 billion have cell phones that they're using to very. And that would include me at the very bottom of the spectrum, how I use it, and others who are checking in 200 times a day. They're interacting.
Right.
200 times a day. So, but my feeling is that artificial intelligence is a technology that's necessary not to get ahead of humans, but to actually catch up with humans.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's that humanity is way ahead. Humanity is always infinitely ahead of technology in terms of what we want and what we're striving for. And I think all artificial intelligence is to serve some kind of marketing. Yes.
Well, certainly, I mean, it can help in that direction. I think when you said kind of looking, I think that what it really does is it can be helpful when looking backward helps. When you can predict the future by looking backwards. I think in like telephony-aided customer service or interactions with where, plus or minus a very small percentage of outliers, the interactions are always the same, where somebody's calling about, I'd like to, check on my bank balance. Okay, tell me what's your bank account, like any of those kind of things. And that's been around for a while, but historically, like I think what people are, where there's a known universe of information that can be gathered. That's why it's my thing that I use Alexa for more than anything is we were watching a show the other day called The Blacklist on Netflix. And
yes.
Have you seen that show? It was really well done.
Yeah. But and I'm always in a particular series, and The Blacklist hasn't gotten up enough that it'll be the next series.
Okay. Well, Alan Alda.
But your liking of it enters into my thinking.
Oh, yeah, I loved it. So Alan Alda was in the show, and I was thinking, boy, he looks great. Like, he's been around for so long. I wonder how old he is.
He must be
and of
80.
Course,
he must be
84. Yeah. So
84,
so I just call out to Alexa. Alexa, how old's Alan Alda? Alan Alda is 84 years old. I mean, it's that, like, access to facts and knowledge is, that's where it's really nailed down kind of thing, right? Where you're accessing anything that's known and you just want to know the answer. I think those things are that's pretty crazy, right? To think that you really have access to all of that just from the ether. Because I'm sitting in the living room and Alexa's in the kitchen, and I just call out, and here comes the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I imagine that, and if I used some of these skills that you have, I could conceivably say to Alexa, can you email Dan Sullivan and tell him, I'm going to be on the phone at 12:30 or whatever, even though we don't need to do that. But I get the things from Anna as reminders. Yeah. But, that kind of thing can all be done by voice. And I think that's really, there's a role and a helpful place for that.
Yeah. Well,
but I wonder if you'll be able to say, Alexa, what are the top 3 things I should be doing today? What am I procrastinating today? I wonder if Alexa will ever be able to tell us what we're procrastinating.
Now, this is my whole point, because my sense is that in the way that we can't enter into predicting other people's creativity,
right?
Well, if we can't do it, then there's no other external factor that's ever going to be able to do it, because it's being created. It's being created, and so my sense is. But here's an insight I got, is that what artificial intelligence is going to do is going to convince human beings more and more over the coming decades to stop trying to be machines.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you try to be a machine, in other words, in your behavior and your approach to life, and more and more you're going to be in competition with super machines. So I have to tell you, it's not going to be a winning experience. You know, it's good. I mean, it's it's the who's the top tennis player in the world right now? Men's top tennis player in the world right now. Do you have any sense? I know you follow that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether it be
it's a handful.
Roger Federer or Djokovic.
Okay, well, let's say Federer, and you choose as your first experience of playing a game of tennis against Roger Federer. It's not going to be a pleasant experience for you.
Right. That's true.
The only person who's going to be unhappier with the experience is Roger Federer.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's so funny. I mean, you look at that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think. Well, there was one thing I think, like you're talking about the machines, and what's interesting there. I heard a conversation about somebody had a school that trains tradesmen. In electricians and plumbers and HVAC people. And that their biggest thing right now is getting millennials to choose those professions. They will, compared to just the shift is that if they're Cloudlandia focused, these are my interpretation of it. If they're Cloudlandia focused of it, they're going to school, they're taking on student loans, they're coming out with $100,000 in debt, and a tough job market, competitive job market. And he's saying that those, for them, that they can get paid to train and come out with a potentially 6-figure job at the end of in 4 years, compared to going to the traditional college route right now. But it's not seen as sexy or jobs of the future kind of
cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a coolness factor. I'm really struck because if you read about the lives of people who work at Facebook or they work at Google, their existence is pretty much that of college students living in dorms.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it's almost like it's perpetual adolescence. If you go to work in Cloudlandia, it's like you have a sense that you're on the inside because you're working for one of the coolest organizations in the world, and you're, and everything else. But if you actually look at your mainland existence isn't much different than when you were a college student living on a budget in a dorm. And you have about as much freedom over, the daily activities, and you have as much of a future ahead of you as a college student does, halfway through their college existence, except this college existence just, goes on forever.
Yes. Yeah. Isn't that, I mean, it's really, I think it's really becoming even more of a dividing debate as the sort of migration continues,
Yeah, it's really interesting because we live in but our offices are in a section, the Liberty Village thing.
Yeah.
Pretty much all Cloudlandia workers. They're I call them technoproles. They're proletariat, but they're technoproles. And
you got there way before that.
Well, I was there before any of them were down there, but it's interesting because in the morning and evening, we're driving in or we're driving out, and I see them, and it's really become very, very populated on the sidewalks, both, at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. Yeah. But if I were to drive about maybe 4 miles to the University of Toronto, and I sat there and I watched, there's no difference between the ones who are on they look exactly the same. They may be older, older and everything else, but they dress the same. They all have backpacks. They all have earphones in their in their ears. None of them are talking. None of them are talking to each other. They're all plugged into Cloudlandia in one way or another. And I said, that it's almost like that the high-tech proletarian work life isn't any different than the college life. It used to be. I mean, if I go back to when I was a college student in the 1960s, so there was a radical difference between what students looked like and what the business community looked like. Just a radical difference. But now there's no difference. They look kind of shabby. They're not well dressed. I mean, there's a shabbiness to them. They're not well coiffed and everything like that. So it's a really, really interesting thing how Cloudlandia constantly puts a promise out to the future, but it's not here today, and you're geared into that because you're on the inside track to this much bigger future. Whereas somebody who goes through the type of training that you were talking about, and they're an electrician or a plumber or a skilled carpenter or all the things that we need. Their future is today because they're earning big bucks and they're saving money and they probably own their own home after a short period of time.
Yeah, that's the point, right? Coming out of the 4 year, like in the path to a 6-figure income is clearer as in 4 years than going down the traditional college route. And that was their biggest thing is finding people who will choose that path. They're not you don't pay to go to a trade school. It's kind of like these guys are looking to intern people into it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
I mean, it's really I stay in touch because we have a lot of millennial age team members who work for Coach, and and after they're with Coach for about 6 months, they start finding it harder and harder to talk to the peers that they went through, and all of them are college, virtually everybody who works for us has a college degree. But it's really fascinating to talk to them about how they're comparing their Coach experience with the peers who are out, they've gotten jobs somewhere, and everything like that. And one of the things that I noticed a huge difference that when you're in Coach, because the focus of Strategic Coach, working at Strategic Coach, is that we're really interested in your unique ability. And to the degree that you keep becoming more and more useful in the company, you're going to have a greater freedom of actually using your unique ability to almost create your own job. Paul Hamilton's example of that, Shannon Waller, Kathy Davis,
Yeah.
We have so many people, Julia Waller, they've all created their own income, but it's based on them being useful while getting a greater handle on their unique ability. And almost to a person said, if I had known this when I was 13 or 14, I could have skipped college altogether. And I said, so what's the conversation with people you went to college? They said they all wish they were back in college. Because they hate. Well,
college is a very it's kind of idealized thing. It's really you got the social environment. You got basically a 15 or 20 hour work week if you look at it from classes. Probably more like 15 hours a week, 3 or 4 hours a day of classes, maybe 4 days a week, and then the rest of it is sort of independent study, lots of procrastination time, and loosely held together with the with that form of the grades at the end.
Yeah.
And to keep that kind of going seems like a great thing. I was reading really even about how the co-working spaces, which have really become very popular among startups and kind of Cloudlandia companies, is now really filtering into co-living spaces where it's almost like creating dorms for dorms for graduating millennials who don't want to give up that college sort of environment, and even now there's sort of hostels are becoming mainstream now. There's a brand that's coming to make that kind of travel normal now,
Yeah, I mean, when Zuckerberg was testifying in front of Congress, I was watching him, and I said, he's like, he's kind of like, you almost have a sense that this is the first time he's worn a suit. It's like he was showing up for a job interview, so he got cleaned up and and everything like that. And I said, but I was just watching him, and I said, I mean, it wouldn't take much to see him as kind of the head of the dorm, back at Harvard or something, It's just that he's bringing in $700 billion a year now with his dorm, but certain things haven't changed at all. And, and his kind of surprise that, his technology can be used for negative purposes, negative activity. It comes to him like a complete shock, like oh my golly, that
oh my golly,
you mean the neighbors? Our parties are too loud, And,
that certainly wasn't our intention. That wasn't our intention.
No. We're going to have to work on this. This is going to take 2 or 3 years to work on.
I do take responsibility for it, though.
I do take responsibility, but it's going to take a lot of time for us to think this through, And I just said it was kind of like suspended adolescence. I just got this feeling of suspended adolescence. And I mean, that's one hand, and on the other hand, I hear he's a real killer, kind of a ruthless killer when it comes to business deals and everything like that. But that he was probably born with that, so that's not something he developed out in the marketplace. He's probably, got that, and but it's really interesting. The Cloudlandia does not really require much emotional growth. It doesn't really require, the mainland really does, because you have to pay the rent. There's all sorts of things you have to do in the mainland. So my feeling is that trying to immerse yourself and get more and more detached from the mainland, and trying to see if you can live your entire existence inside Cloudlandia, it really it doesn't require as much 360-degree consciousness and emotional growth as the mainland does. Yeah,
I think you're right.
Yeah,
it's really, I think that there's such fertile ground here for conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, this transition is it's going to be the defining migration of our generation here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. In an earlier age, it's the switch from and I grew up on a farm, so I made this switch. But I love cities. And I've only lived in cities since I left home. But I still have an enormous amount of my sense of how the world works come from the fact that I grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, we have previous historical transformations like this.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway. So if you had to say one thing that you're most intrigued about by our conversation as we go back out into the mainland experience, what would you say it is right now? Because we've covered a lot of ground today.
We really did. I think going back to where your goal for the thing is to get to this place of being decided faster.
Yes.
Not to explore all the options or to keep exploring. Your goal is to get to decided, and that makes a difference. Did I ask you about your Myers-Briggs? Do you know what your
Myers-Briggs is? I don't know what the letters are, but it means that
Are you an INTJ?
I'm slightly on the introvert side of the line. I'm not really deep into it, but
right, me too.
Left to my own devices, I spend my time alone.
Yes. But do you remember whether you were a judger or perceiver?
Perceiver. Okay,
yeah, me too. But you seem to be able to flex your J, as they say, more. Yeah, because our natural tendency, I'm an INTP as well. And so our natural tendency is to want to explore or keep our options open. And you have trained yourself, seems like then, to seek out decided, which is a J.
Well, I think it's what I've done is a shift like you did. Yours was, if I remember very early in our conversation, the shift was, whereas my approach would be that I would get up in the morning and I would say, what do I most want to do today? Okay. You shifted it one day that you would get up and say, what do I want to most do tomorrow? Okay.
Right. That's been a big shift. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say that it's not a violation of your Myers-Briggs profile. It's just that
true.
Learned that in order for me to have my options open, I've got to have today handled. Okay.
I like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So my feeling is you just build another rule into your approach to the future where it's I'm just going to move it by 24 hours. So I'm just going to move that rule forward. I'm going to have to be my
that'll be my reflection and meditation this week.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I've done the same thing, that I'm always going to have tomorrow handled so that the next day is more open.
Yes. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've just, again, there's what your natural tendency is, but there's also the rules that you have to put in place so that you can actually have your natural tendency always be producing a positive experience. I think there's a difference between what your approach is and what the rules are that support that approach.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Wonderful conversation. And the biggest thing that I'm taking away is that you got a prize on behalf of another person's relationship with you.
Oh, tell me what happened.
No, you got a.
Oh, that I got a prize.
Joe.
Yes,
you got a prize. You accepted a prize because on behalf of another person, and the only reason they're getting the prize is because they have a relationship with you.
It's so funny. I love it.
That's like a Zen koan, It's
it really is. It's the best. Yeah, that's what what I felt like. John Lennon accepting the prize for Paul McCartney. That was great.
No, Paul accepting the prize on behalf of John Lennon because John
there we
Lennon
go. Perfect
relationship with Paul McCartney.
That's true. Yes, exactly. Right.
I love it.
Very funny.
Yeah.
Well, always enjoyable.
Thankfully, Joe is still alive.
Absolutely, yeah. We got plenty of swimming pools to write.
Yeah. Okay, Dean.
Thanks, Dan. Bye.
Bye.